Hey guys, it's Jessica Fury, host of Dumb Girl Podcast. Tune in every Monday for new episodes. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Welcome to Dumb Girl Podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Fury. Today we have Cody Blue Snider. He is a director, screenwriter, and he is a member of the Writer and Directors Guild. He has had 40 international awards for his independent films. He has directed The Fool's Day, which aired at the Tribeca Film Festival that was picked up by New Line Cinema. And it launched his career in Hollywood. He is the son of Rockstar Snider and beautiful wife Suzette. And he is the host of the Awaken podcast. Last year in 2022, it was #1 for spirituality and #1 in self-improvement podcasts. And it was #4 in education podcasts. Cody Blue, welcome to Dumb Girl Podcast.
What's up, girl?
That was a long bunch of words that you have you just have so much experience with things.
Well, I'm only knowledgeable in very few subject matters. Film, writing, psychedelic medicines, spirituality. I think those are the only things I really know how to, and health and wellness. That's about it.
No, but I think I think it's okay sometimes where you're just like, yeah, I'm all these things. I'm a writer, I'm a director, I'm a screenwriter, I'm part of the Writers Guild, the Directors Guild. That's huge.
Oh, thanks. You were super sweet. I'm a work in progress, but yeah, I direct, I screenwrite professionally, and as you said, I host the Awaken Underground podcast, the psychedelic podcast, and yeah, I mean, among other things, you know, and just a human being.
Yeah, we were just talking right before we started. So I, prior to doing real estate, making a career change, all the stuff that we were just talking about, why I want to go back into like doing another sitting with the medicine, which is an ayahuasca ceremony, and that's how I met Cody and his fiance. I met them sitting with them in an ayahuasca ceremony that I've done, and we've been friends ever since. And I've trained a lot of celebrities and high profile people, and because I have to maintain a sense of confidentiality and professionalism, I can't really get into the nitty gritty of the lifestyle that goes on with themselves and growing up in a family where you're like you're either your parents are actors or actresses, or your parents are musicians. And I would love to get your take on what is it like growing up as someone who is I know that you have a brother, you have brothers, and you have your sister, and what is it like growing up with one of your parents that's like a known rock star? Like, what is that like? And I would love for you to start with that and to bring myself and the listeners up to speed where you are now, and a little tiny window of that journey that you've briefly mentioned with plant medicine, which we will get into today.
Yeah, of course. I mean, yeah, I can talk about my pops. I mean, relativity is a real bitch. I don't know anything other than the upbringing I had, so I have nothing to compare it to, really. My opinion on my upbringing is I love my family and I love my parents so much, and I'm just nothing but grateful. I don't have anything to compare it to, but it was interesting. I'd say when I was born. So all right, so you said it, but my dad's name is D. Snider. He's the lead singer of a band called Twisted Sister. He's like a multi-platinum recording artist. And when I was born, my dad had left the band, and the record label sued him, and he went bankrupt twice. So when I was born, my family had nothing. My dad was riding a bike to work every day, working a 9-to-5 job, answering phones as like a receptionist, and then also like putting flyers on car windows and parking lots for like advertisements. And he was doing this at the peak of his fame, so he would like wear a disguise when he was doing it. And every day people would be like, "Hey man, don't you look like D. Snider?" And he'd be like, "Oh," he's like, "Anyone ever tell you that?" My dad'd be like, "Every day," but no, it's not me, and would pretend he wasn't him. So, it was an interesting it was an interesting time, but I had no idea. Again, relativity. I had no idea. My parents did a really good job making it feel like, we had a beautiful, rich life. I think the first time I remember it clicking is when I was in elementary school and took someone home to hang out, and they saw where I lived, and they were like disappointed or something, and they thought I would live in like a big house or something, and I was, I didn't understand what was going on, why they were disappointed, and why they were asking all these weird questions. But ultimately, my dad rebuilt himself, and revitalized his career by like my age of like around 10. So I lived a different life after that. My dad rebuilt his career, and my parents had more money, so it was a bit of a different upbringing. As far as being the son of someone who's a rock star from like a psychological standpoint, I think it's interesting because people either want to be your friend for it, or they hate you for it and they want to tear you down for it. They think maybe you think you're better than them or something, and or they think you're privileged or entitled, or you have a leg up, and so I think more often than not people were probably more friendly to me, but also they would be quick to kind of start a fight. So I grew up when I was younger very ready to defend myself. If you said something, especially my dad was essentially a transvestite rock star. He would wear women's clothing as a glam metal band, right? So people would talk shit, and I grew up like being very quick to defend myself and my family. I'm very much a practicing pacifist now, so it's very different. I've changed a lot, but yeah. So I mean, like that's sort of that. I think the only other thing I'd say that's interesting from a psychological standpoint is, ever since I was a little kid, people would say, hey, when they introduce you, hey, this is Cody Blue, the next thing they say is, he's Dee Snider's son. So when you're growing up with that, it's the first thing, your value is that. So, like that's the bar. So, it's a big shadow. So growing up, it's how do you make a name for yourself, so that's not the first thing somebody says. Hey, look, it's the first thing we're talking about in this question right here. And that's just, so it's a motivator. And, it definitely has, like, motivated me to want to, like, pave my own way. And also, I think it made me want to, like, very much, when I was younger, prove to people that, I made it on my own merit. So I would, intentionally, sometimes I would leave off my last name from things, or all those sort of psychological hurdles. Now, where I am with it is I feel nothing but gratitude, and I embrace who my father is, and I embrace all the gifts and blessings that come with, having a father who's a successful artist, and he's been able to teach me so much about what it takes to be a successful artist, or at least to make it as a freelance artist, and to survive as a freelance artist, and the sacrifices you have to make, and the drive you have to maintain. So yeah, I now feel like I've really, where that was a lot of childhood wounds, now I feel like I've embraced it, and I just focus on the blessing of it. And does that kind of answer your questions around
Yeah,
this?
no, that does answer the question around like the specifics of like your upbringing with your family. I think a lot of times people, for instance, like I moved here I did New York, New Jersey, Los Angeles. You did New York, Los Angeles. And I actually at one time was riding a bike as my mode of transportation.
Wow.
I was on a bus. I would take a bus to get to a client and take it back until I had a car, because I moved here no car, maybe like $5,000 in my pocket, no apartment, because people kept telling me if you want to live in a specific area in LA, you have to be in the area. You can't just say, hey, you have to look at the places. And I'm glad that I did. But so just hearing that sort of like, it's humbling. I've never shared that with anyone. I can't believe I'm sharing that right now. Maybe there's one other person who actually knows that. So it's like, I'm still in the trenches of certain things because I'm making a career change and I'm making it, and you and I have briefly spoke about how connecting it to medicine and healing and the things that we're into. But I think one of the things that always seems to come across my mind is that, one, if you don't know anybody, if you don't know someone to get in the door, you're not gonna, it's like you need to know someone to get in the door, or you need to have famous parents to get in the door. And those are those misconceived notions that even people that are like, what are you talking about? Like, I moved here from New York. I'm trying to like grow a business in Los Angeles. Now I'm finding out that I have to know people to get somewhere. And that's something that I've always been so interested in, even you sharing what you were sharing. It's just so humbling, Cody, because I've always been so interested to be like, is that the only thing? Like, now I have friends, connections, clients, I've connected to people, but I'm like, is that the only way that people get anywhere in this?
Right. Are you saying like, you look at people and you say, is this all about who you know? I think the interesting thing is that.
Has it been that way with you?
Well, I mean, I can spare you my long story, but I have a movie that's set up at Warner Brothers that I've been working on for 13 years to get made, and it's been at the studio, and it's never something like that my dad necessarily like opened. He didn't open any of those doors. It was all myself. But I haven't gotten the movie made. I've been greenlit 4 times. I spent $1.5 million. I've shot. I've casted.
What's greenlit?
Greenlit is when the studio essentially approves the financing budget for it.
Oh.
It's a Warner Brothers movie, so because you can buy a movie or buy a script, and then it goes into development. So the studio essentially develops it, and develops the script and also attaches talent to build a package. And then there's also periphery things that could happen before the full financing for the actual production of it. So I spent like 8 years in development hell. But I mean, this is an interesting thing. I mean, you're asking, what do you have to know someone? My dad, has a bunch of scripts and a ton of projects he can't get made. He can't get shit made. And he does get some of his stuff made, but most of it he can't. I mean, there's great directors like David Lynch. I just saw speaking. Great legendary director. Can't get his movies made. I mean, everyone deals with sort of the difficulty of trying to get things made. It's like, does it give you a leg up? I think it helps people sometimes remember me because they have a connection that they can make. I think having a good father really meant something, to me, and I think having a father who is an artist who could kind of validate that there is a path, to that it could be done. Anytime you see somebody do something that seems impossible, it's like, yeah, it can be done. But yeah, I mean, all my siblings are artists, and they all have their struggles. I mean, we're all struggling to make it in our respective fields, or at least to make it at a greater level, right? I think it's something. I remember seeing the Nepo baby list, and it was all these stars who had children who essentially the list was saying they're all nepotism babies, that they only have their careers because they are the sons and daughters of celebrities.
Yeah, I saw that Hailey Bieber was wearing a shirt a couple weeks ago.
It said Nepo baby on it?
Yeah.
Well, the funny thing about it is look at how many celebrities in how many decades of the past, let's say 50 years, the majority of them have children, the majority of them have multiple children,
yeah.
And the majority of them follow in the footsteps of their famous parent because they're trying to live up to it, and I'd say 99% of them, don't have careers. I mean, if you're in Hollywood, being the son or daughter of someone, you're a dime a dozen. So I mean, it's definitely not the end all be all, but I do think just having a good parent has been the greatest advantage is just having a great parent that loves you and takes care of you and supports you and your dreams. I think that is the undervalue. That has been the greatest value, is just having a great parent.
And I think like under it all, it's like, how were you raised? Because it's like, yes, it's one of those things where it's like, you can be come from a family that you're a really talented actor and you have a daughter and she becomes a known actress. Maybe it just happens to be that way. But I think that it's sort of also, like, I'll take myself as an example where it's like, it doesn't stop me, but this is my personality. It doesn't stop me for going after what I want. I'm not really, it exists. It'll always exist. But it's like, is it going to stop you for what you're trying to, like, really focus on? Like, what is it that you're trying to accomplish? And I love being in LA because we're around creatives. And I feel as if sometimes we learn off of each other. Like, if we're in a creative space, like you have a podcast and I do. And even before this, we were just talking about how to grow a podcast without, maybe spending money or having to reach out to other people to talk about your podcast or whatever it may be and the specific things. But, there was something that I love that connected us among other people that we sit in ceremony with, is that we sort of like detach from all the images that maybe we bring onto ourselves, like whatever those things are. It gives us a chance to really detach from those misconceived notions that maybe we put on ourselves. And I've listened to like several things that you've done before, and I know that you speak about this openly. Can you share some of just the ins and outs of moving through taking prescription medication and then finding your way into using plant medicine as a way of healing and really diving in and seeing it as an opportunity for your own well-being?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, I was stuck on ADHD medication as a child. I was a premature baby. I was born very small and stuck in intensive care, and in an ICU where I had to be rehabilitated, and I had symptoms of ADHD. They stuck me on medication. Kind of like a guinea pig. Most of my adolescence, they would rotate me from one medication to the next. Every drug had a different side effect. Some made me an insomniac, another narcoleptic, some depressed, others anxious, and ultimately, we landed on Adderall, and that was the one that worked the best. It was a great time. I really liked Adderall. It really helped me focus, but there were side effects to it. So in my early 20s, after I sold my first movie to New Line Cinema, my script, a Fool's Day script, I just realized I got stuck in development hell, and I just couldn't bury myself in work. I was raised in very much a workaholic. So once I kind of got stuck in the jaws of the studio system, I had to just really face my shit, and I realized that the medication was making me depressed and anxious, and I went to the doctor and said, hey, I think the pharmaceuticals are making me depressed and anxious. I don't feel right. Like, what do I do? And he's like, double your dosage, add an antidepressant. So I thought it was bullshit. So I was like, okay, let me look into these drugs and see what the deal with them is, and look into the pharmaceutical companies. And what I found out blew my mind. One, the laundry list of side effects, of negative side effects around the drugs, for everything from brain damage to liver damage, to depression, to anxiety, to just everything I was feeling and more, and no doctor had ever even alerted me to it, even after my complaints. I also discovered a lot about pharmaceutical companies themselves. Even the very inception of the pharmaceutical companies was interesting to me. Essentially, I believe it was John D. Rockefeller, who was an oil tycoon, created the AMA, the American Medical Association, and manipulated the medical colleges to move away from homeopathic medicine and move them towards the petrochemical model, the pharmaceutical model, in which we still operate under today. So I started to discover that there was this corruption around how pharmaceuticals were created, and I just decided to go on a journey to find true medicine, and I traveled the world, worked with different doctors, dietitians, and naturopaths. I took the money from the sale of the script and put it into just exploring all these different options.
Did somebody just, sorry, not to interrupt you,
Yeah,
did
please.
someone just, because did you connect with someone that they told you about it? Like, how did you hear to start taking that
I was
path?
trying everything, and I was at a point where I was working with a neuroscientist in Los Angeles. His name was Dr. Andrew Hill, doing a protocol called neurofeedback. And neurofeedback, or biofeedback, I think it's neurofeedback. Neurofeedback essentially is a technique that was invented in the 70s. It's like brain training. And what they'll do is they'll sit you in a chair and put you in front of let's say a movie, and they'll hook you to, hook your head with all these electrodes, and they'll measure your brain waves, your alpha, your beta, your delta, and every time your brain waves fluctuate. So if let's say we want more alpha, every time your brain waves fluctuate to more alpha, they will take the screen with the movie playing and they will brighten the screen and louder the volume. So you're essentially feeding the brain stimulation every time it starts to fluctuate in a rhythm that is in the manner we want it to grow. And you'll do these 30-minute sessions. I said, do you want me to?
Oh yeah.
All right, ready? 3, 2, 1.
Sorry. So anyway, when your brainwaves fluctuate in a manner that is more in alignment with how they want to change your brain, they'll sorry, let me start over. So the point of so you'll go to this brain training 2 times a week for several months, and ultimately this can completely rewire your brain. In the 70s, when it was invented, it healed a woman of epilepsy completely. And actually the pharmaceutical companies sort of ran a negative campaign that sort of got this technology pushed into the underground. So it was something I did have a lot of luck with, but while I was there was a professor at UCLA who was studying psychedelic medicines. So I pulled her into a room and asked her about it. She's the first person to tell me, about the big entheogenic medicines. So like the most known and successful and famous psychedelic medicines or entheogens are ayahuasca, for those at home, are ayahuasca, wachuma, ibogaine, psilocybin mushroom or teanocotl, and vilca or DMT. And she's the one who told me about these and told me that they were having a great breakthroughs and benefits at the college when they were doing research on it. And after doing some research of my own, me and my brother Shane, we decided to fly to Peru and go work with the Shipibo tribe, and for a couple weeks and sit in these medicine ceremonies. We worked with Bobansana, ayahuasca, vilca, and wachuma. And yeah, I mean, I was at a laboratory with getting my brain scanned all the time. So when I came back, I got another brain scan to see the difference, and the psychedelic plant medicines completely rewired my brain.
Wow.
Yeah, and I had concussions from football and snowboarding and jiu-jitsu, brain damage, and it completely healed the brain damage. So, I mean, I had then physical evidence that my brain had completely healed, and this is back in 2016, so before psychedelics are so mainstream now. So I was like, oh my God, this is like a miracle cure, and it's illegal. And I showed my family, my straight edge family, and they, after seeing the physical evidence, my mom, she was like, I want to do ayahuasca, and she hopped on a plane and flew out to the jungle to work with the tribes, and it healed her as well. And she did the same thing. She had brain scans. It changed her brain.
She has a great story. She has such a great story. Like, I want to sit with that woman. I'm like, why haven't I sat with her yet?
Oh my God, she's so amazing. She's such
why haven't I sat?
She's so amazing, and it healed her. And her story is so profound because she's so good in the medicine. But on her last night of medicine, the shaman came up to her and said, "Don't drink. Like, you're done. Like, no drinking." And she sat in ceremony without drinking medicine, and straight up astral projected from her body, went to another dimension, like, with no medicine. So like, she's like, she's, and that's the thing with this is, you've sat with these, and I'm really curious what your experience is, but you can sit in these ceremonies, like the healing, at least for me, that's the thing you tell people about, but for me that's a secondary component. Like, the experience itself is so otherworldly and mystical and profound and strange that you know, to me the healing is like secondary. It's like I mean it's the thing that matters the most, but I'm always so blown away. Did you have what was your experience working with medicine?
I mean, like, so you guys, I really, like, I was telling a mutual friend, I was like, I really am being called, like, I really need to sit. Like, right now I know that I need to sit with medicine. But, like, so I actually am one of those people that, first of all, it takes me 2.5 hours to finish a drink. I am the worst first date. Like, you're not getting anywhere. Like, you do not even want to take forever. You know, like, I like to smoke pot, but I don't like to smoke pot. I just, like, it's just the way that I am. However, I did have a brother who passed from an opioid addiction.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
And he comes through.
Oh my God. Oh, I remember this.
Yeah,
yes, I remember.
He comes through. He comes through the medicine.
So
that's how and it's really weird. So I've only sat several times. I probably drank about 6 times.
Oh my God.
And but I went into, you know, I struggle with my own anxieties. I have struggled with situational depression, they call it. I don't, because you have clinical depression or you situational depression.
Right.
Situational depression it's all the symptoms of depression based off of a situation that's going on. And I worked with like a bunch of doctors that helped me understand that.
Wow.
But when I went into the medicine during the first time, it was based off of something that was with like fear and insecurity. And I'm a writer. And I write a lot. Like, I noticed that your fiance, she also writes during ceremony. But I went in there just to work with that part of the medicine. And the first time when I sat, I just thought it was just like such a cool thing. Like, it was such a cool, I was like, this is great. But I was terrified.
Yeah,
like, I was terrified. Like, I literally sat on the phone with Lauren, I kid you not, for an hour. For an hour. And every
afterwards or in the ceremony?
prior to it, I was so terrified.
Yeah, me too.
I was so terrified to go into the medicine because every question I asked him came back to this one specific question: will I overdose and die?
Right.
That was my every question that I asked him. That was the underlying thing.
Right.
And what's crazy is that I actually, and I was like thinking about it and really just listening to like other episodes and just really connecting to other people that have had experience with the medicine, is that something dies inside of me every time that I do it.
Yeah.
And the recollection of different ceremonies, I have it in writing. But the first time was like really fun. It was more fun because it was all new.
Yeah, right.
But there's a part of happiness that comes out of me through movement that I love to sit with medicine.
Yeah.
Because it connects me to a person that I miss.
Oh,
I miss that. And I think that I just want to just bring this point up for a second, is that what's crazy is that, so your dad, and I wrote this down, it was like your dad gave you this recipe for success. It was this single-minded focus to eliminate the outside noise and to dedicate your life to just your singular goal, to keep a positive attitude, work hard, and don't stop until you achieve your dream. And what's cool is that you actually speak about your being a workaholic.
Yeah.
And I don't see myself as a workaholic, but I actually do connect to the symptoms of a workaholic, so I would say that I am. So when I went into the medicine the second time, I went with a creative project. And on the first night, I worked through this fucking podcast. I worked through the first night, I fucking wrote this podcast out.
Oh, wow.
The second night, Mother Ayahuasca connected me to this person that I love very dearly. And I know that people that listen to my podcast know that, you know, how I feel about one individual in my life. I love him very, very much. I adore him. I adore him. I love him so much. I fucking cried all night. And I remember like my body convulsing and crying, and then towards the end of the night, what's crazy is that, so when I go to ceremony, I set my pillows up as if I'm meditating. And I'm a meditator, you're a meditator. Yeah. And I set my pillows up as I'm a meditator. And if you haven't done plant medicine, I should have added this at the beginning of our episode, is that always check with a doctor first, always check with a medical professional, it's good to reach out to people that are friends of yours to ask about your experience, but always connect with a medical professional first if you're going to come into a place of using psychedelics. And there's a lot of people out there that have a lot of information with this. This is just, we're just kind of bonding with this. And I turn to the pillows that are sitting there, and I'm on my knees, and this connection of self-love that was there, and honor and love that was there. It was crazy.
Yeah.
It was like really crazy. And then the time after that, I can't recall the specifics around it, but I feel called to go back into it just because, and I want to hear your thoughts on this, is that when you step into a new either career or creative project, how do you navigate around doubt or fear or uncertainty of like, I'm gonna fail at this? Like, is it do you look at it as predominantly, oh, that's just your ego coming over? Or is it a real thing for you to look at and turn inward and say, what is it that you're not giving yourself?
Wow. That was so much. I have so many questions for you about everything you just said.
Questions for me?
Yeah, I mean, you just said so much. The question is, though, how do I navigate doubt in the creative process?
Well, yeah, when it comes up or in the creative process or a new career. I was telling you yesterday, like, I get doubt, I get fear, I get uncertainty, I get failure. I love to sleep, and on nights that I get sleepless nights, what that does to me, it creates anxiety. And when I have days that I'm really have a lot of anxiety, is I gotta step back. I have to completely step back.
Well, I mean, this is such a complicated answer. I mean, so how do I deal with doubt? I think there's something to be said about your. I don't even know where to begin with this. Yeah. When I was coming up, I've been directing. I'm 33 years old, right? So I started directing when I was 15.
Wow.
Alright, so it's been 18 years, and I've been professionally directing for about 14 years, and I've been in the union for almost a decade. I used to deal with doubt a lot more, but it was at that time I wanted to be what I would say is I want to be the best director in my generation. That was my young mantra. I had an Oscar on my wall since I was like 15 years old. I would look at it every day, and it was very much this ambition consciousness. That was very sweet. I love that you quoted the episode on the Awaken Underground healing work, and I about workaholism, and it talks about that single-minded focus and that commitment to this goal. I mean, I grew up an athlete, and that was sort of, how hard you could push yourself was a testament of a man, and all the great athletes and artists, that's what they did. They pushed themselves, like Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan as an example. So that's the model I used. But as an artist, that's not necessarily a functional model. Because if you're an artist, you're creating, you're essentially channeling this work in, and there's a lot about like nurturing your creative channel. So what I'd say is that the difference between then and now is I have done so much plant medicine. I have like died so many times, and doing a medicine ceremony, you die. Like you die. Your consciousness expands beyond your identity and your physical form, and you merge with this primordial consciousness, and you very quickly learn that sort of all things are connected, and you are everything, and there is no you, and the opposite of every truth is equally as true, and all is one is all, and all these paradoxical equations. And it changed me, and it made me very much in service of the collective, less myself. So I think when it also made me realize that this is a subset reality. This is not the end all be all. This is a game. That we're having an experience, and I believe that this experience is to teach us and grow us. And so I stopped making it for doing things for my ego identity. Everything became a bit different. My art became more chopping wood and carrying water. It became very practical. My priorities shifted, and instead of trying to be something, I just started saying, I just want to be able to provide for my family. I want to be I want to be a better member of my family. I want to take care of the people closest to me. I don't care the outcome. I just care the process more, and I care the more why I'm doing something, not what the outcome is. So Awaken Underground's a perfect example. I mean, I never intended on making a psychedelic podcast. I was closeted with my work with psychedelics. I hold, me and my partner Tanya hold space for medicine ceremonies, for mushrooms, and do healing work, and I was closeted with it. And I never wanted to come out, but I got asked to do the podcast and came out, and it helped a lot of people. And it didn't, even before I knew what the reaction was to it, I just felt good. It just felt more like an itch I had to scratch, like it's just something I had to do, and regardless of the outcome. I guess what I'm saying is I don't feel the same level of doubt because I'm more process oriented than I am result oriented, and I'm more focused on why I'm doing something than what the outcome is. I also think probably the greatest answer is everything I have already experienced so much loss and failure when it comes to my career that it really liberated me from the fear of it, and so it's almost like in facing death, I was free of it. So the secret to life is to die before you die and discover death ain't real. So it's psychedelics have were a death many times, and that's why I do psychedelics, to prepare for death and to practice that state of dying. And then I don't know if that answered your question, but this is kind of the truth.
Now, but was it because using medicine that you were able to connect all these things? Because this is what I love, and I want you to tie this in, your daily wellness. I know that you have a wellness routine, and I fucking love that. You have a wellness, because some people, they have the workout and they got that down, but you have other.
I have a regimen.
Yeah, I want to hear about the specifics of that.
Well, look, I can give you my regimen, and I can also give you probably because it's a daily. I feel every day, and we talked a little bit about this. I feel every day, I'm a work in progress, right? My regimen itself is very ritualistic, and because I have to write during the day. So I'm a professional writer, and
you're telling me, and you're telling somebody who's also listening.
Okay, so I had a lot of problems writing. I'm a professional writer. Growing up, I could not write an essay in English class. I was never validated as a writer. I won, the Austin Film Festival Writing Award. It's one of the best film festivals for screenwriting, and but years prior, I could not write as far as English class growing up. I just couldn't focus. So I had to develop an intense regimen when I stopped taking Adderall, to try to figure out what the best way to get myself to focus with no pharmaceuticals was. It was very specific. Waking up early in the morning, fasting in the morning. So that was a big one. And going right into writing. I essentially I drink coffee, I meditate, I do a ritual which involves prayer and lighting a candle, maybe some sage and visualization. I mean, if I pull a tarot card, I have my spiritual practice that I do. And then I open my eyes out of my meditation, and I go right into 3 to 4 hours of channel writing. And there's a few reasons for this. One is you produce DMT when you sleep, which is a dream state of consciousness. When you wake up, you are more connected to that dreamlike state, that creative state. If you carry for those first 3 or 4 hours, go right into your creative work, you are more connected to that creative channel. Another thing is you're not letting psychic energy from other things like TV or your phone come in, which will pull at and fraction your mind. So you're essentially trying to omit as much excess energy or psychic distraction that will fracture your mind, or for me, fracture my mind, and I'll go right from a meditative state, from sleep to coffee to meditation to right into work to writing. And I can get a lot done if I do that from a writing standpoint. That's what changed me. The other thing is when I would eat food, 70% of the blood from your brain goes into your stomach to process the food. It might even be more. But so if I was fasted, I would be able to function at a higher level. Also, I find that fasting allows me to focus better. I think it puts me in more of a survival state. I don't believe we eat first thing in the morning. I believe you wake up and you go hunt. Yeah. So if I want to be in a hunter mindset, or gatherer mindset, I don't eat. So
I fast. I unintentionally fast. I started doing IF
What's I have?
Intermittent fasting.
Yeah,
I started doing intermittent fasting when I did keto. I have so much experience with like diets and nutrition.
How do you like keto?
I don't do keto.
Have you ever done it?
I did it at one time.
What did it work
I'm not a big fan of it because I believe in balance.
Right. Well,
and with keto is you're almost eating butter. You have to literally, I had to use like a calorie counter, like a chronometer. That was the app that I used because I had to measure every single thing that I ate.
Right.
Because if you go over, because you're trying to get your body into ketosis.
Right.
And in order to get in ketosis, you have to eat at about 75% fats.
Whoa.
And I like vegetables. I actually love salads. Like I love salads. Like I'm on death row and they're like, what do you want? I'm like, just give me a salad. Like
you.
with salad and like goat cheese. With like steak and goat cheese and I'm good. But like in order to get to ketosis, if you're having vegetables are also a form of a carbohydrate. You need to have the leafiest green.
Vegetables are carbs?
They're a carbohydrate.
Why?
There's a carbohydrate in there. So if you're only taking in 5% to 10% of your daily intake of a carbohydrate, and you're also using proteins, you have to balance out that whole entire thing. Because if you go over those percentages,
Whoa.
you're not in ketosis. And people want to get their body into ketosis, where the fat burning is happening. That's why I'm not a big fan of keto, because I like food, nutrition. I believe that most of the food that I have grow from a plant. They're alive,
right.
But I do eat meats. They're very healthy for my body. They're good for my blood, and they're good for my skin, and good for my hair. But going back to what you're saying with intermittent fasting, that's when I started doing it. You know,
Yeah.
it's big with like Tim Ferriss and Dave Asprey and all those
no,
guys.
Both of them are great.
Yeah, but intermittent fasting, sometimes I fast for like 18 hours.
Oh my God. Well, good for you. I mean, how do you feel?
Good.
How do you feel when you?
I feel fine.
At
first it's challenging.
Yeah, right. There's definitely I try to. So the problem I have is I've been eating vegan for about like 8 years.
Wow.
So I have trouble with my caloric, like getting a lot of calories.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to. Yeah, I mean, like I have to get some sort of protein, and I'm trying to like I work out, so I'm trying to like grow muscle. It's very tough for me when I have so little, my caloric intake so low. But yeah, I love that. I didn't know you worked with ketosis. I've always dreamed of it, but it's so hard to do a vegan keto diet. So
I just believe in balance. I believe in like
right
having to
middle path.
Yeah.
Right? That's the very Buddhist, the middle. But you know that story about the Buddha?
Mm-mm.
Oh, I hope I don't punch you right. I essentially they're just like anything. There are fashions of the time, and there were spiritual fashions of the time when the Buddha was alive, and one of them was asceticism, and which is largely predicated on self-denial. So this consists of people going into the woods and fasting and meditating for long periods of time, and this was a fashion of the time around spiritual fashion. So the Buddha was doing that and practicing that, and I believe trigger warning, his like hip bone popped out of his skin while he was fasting. Yeah, I know it's fucking gross. And after that he developed the middle path, and he pretty much said no extremes. So, and I do think if you practice direct spiritual, empirical spirituality, experiential spirituality, like, working with plant medicines, when you go into that altered state of consciousness, it is a flow state. You merge with this ocean of energy, and you're like flowing, and that's the whole psychedelic vision. It's ever unfolding and ebbing and flowing and morphing, and it's a ride. It's a journey, right? So I guess what I'm saying is, like, I do think what we call the middle path is a way we're trying to describe being in that flow with things, and not being so one side or the other, and not being rigid or identifying too hard with something. So I totally get that. Yeah.
And going back to the carbohydrate thing, so food is either higher in a fat, a protein, or a carbohydrate. There's no blank. There's not like,
what was that? You said it was a fat?
Yeah. So when you look at the food groups, they either fall under a category as a fat, a carbohydrate, or a protein. There's no like a category for blank. So whatever it is, even if it's like a salad is gonna fall under like something that's that's either gonna be a
Right.
fat or carb. So vegetables do fall into that category. But I want to say, I can literally, and I may have to like bring you on like another time.
You talk about food, health, and food for a while.
No.
Can you tell me what if carbs are good for you or bad for you?
I'm a person of balance.
Okay.
I'm a person of balance.
So you think it's everything in moderation?
Yes.
That's the headline.
Yes, I believe
Right,
in balance.
I
I totally believe in balance, and I want to finish with just like one last question with you is if somebody were to be interested in experimenting on taking those next steps towards plant medicine and maybe removing themselves from using medication, what would be the steps that you would instruct them to take?
Yeah, I mean, so glad you asked. Well, first thing is we made a 10-episode podcast last year, and it will take you on a journey of that. Have my family come on the first episode, then we have doctors, Johns Hopkins doctors and psychiatrists, Deepak Chopra comes on, and it will take you on a full journey, and we'll even recommend some places. And we even have a firm, an integration and preparation firm come on to talk about in the last episode about how to prepare and how to integrate. Now, with that said, legally, I need to say that you have to consult with your doctor, especially when weaning off your medication. But yeah, I mean, I'd say be gentle on yourself, do it gradually, work with your doctor to wean yourself off the pharmaceuticals. And I think it's a journey to get off medication. There definitely is a light at the end of the tunnel. It definitely takes a while for the neurochemistry to rebalance. But at the end of the day, taking pharmaceuticals and thinking you're healthy is like taking a loan out from a bank and thinking you're rich. It's just masking the symptoms of whatever the issue is. And your emotions are your greatest teachers. The pain you're feeling is trying to teach you something. And I know there's many different types of mental health problems and illness, so to say these generalized blanket statements can be a little bit obtuse, but from doing this work for so long, I generally do feel that psychedelics are an alternative, and for me they were a better avenue because they healed the source of the wound for me. Now these medicines come from the earth, and they are naturally meant for you to pull them out of the earth and eat them and go on your visionary quest. I highly suggest you work with a shaman or a plant medicine person that you really trust. I think if you want to start a psychedelic journey and you cannot find a shaman, I don't know if I'm legally allowed to say this, but at certain places, in certain places this is legal, so I'm speaking to those people. Microdosing psilocybin mushrooms is a good place for you to start. You can find online, I'm sure, a microdose regimen. I think it's like 2 days on, 1 day off. It's a very limited amount, and you shouldn't have a psychedelic trip off of it. It should be something that works on a very subconscious level. I have my father and my mother on microdose regimens. On the show, it actually goes through the journey of me sitting my dad with a doctor and having him get put on a microdose regimen and then reporting back. My father's famously straight edge. After that, there is the warrior's dose of psilocybin mushrooms, and that's where I'd suggest you go. That's going to be like a 4 or 5 hour experience. The deal with that is do it in nature where you can be comfortable, where you have an experienced facilitator, fasted, you don't want any food in your system, and you will get what you ask for. If you are someone who is open and wants to have a spiritual experience, all you gotta do is ask. Just plain and simple. If you ask for it, if you want a teacher, you'll get a teacher. If you want a healer, you'll get a healer. These medicines are very intelligent. And I mean, this is the real life red pill. This is the doorway, the doors of perception. I mean, to opening the doors of perception. I mean, I was just using this analogy. I mean, this is very much like fucking Chronicles of Narnia or some shit. Like there's like there's a magic wardrobe cupboard you open up and you go to another world.
Yeah.
Like, I personally am just taking it upon myself to be a doorman and just tell people what's on the other side and offer them the resources so they can do it, because it helped me so much, and I do think it can heal the world. Outside of that, if you want to go beyond that, and by the way, this can heal not just mood disorders, this can also heal physical illnesses. I walked to my first mushroom ceremony with a back brace on from a stress fracture on my spine. I've never worn it again. It's been 8 years. And that's not the only physical ailment I've seen.
I'm gonna have to like drive them to go listen to all your episodes. They're gonna have to listen to all the episodes on the Awaken podcast. He does talk about all that stuff. I think it's so awesome.
Sorry if I'm going too much.
No, don't even sweat, Cody.
The only thing I want to say is next is ayahuasca and wachuma and ibogaine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if
I think
you,
that's awesome.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. No, I just appreciate like so much of that information. It also feels like so new to me, like just being in such the earlier part of it, and I'm just so grateful that to even sit in the same space with you and you come into my space. Thank you. I love to ask all my guests before they leave. I ask them 3 questions, and I think you already answered one of them. What is a non-negotiable in your morning routine that grounds you for the day?
I mean, it seems like it would be coffee, but meditation.
Same. Can you leave the listeners with one suggestion or piece of advice they can apply to their wellness, daily routine, their business, and or relationship?
One piece of advice that could help with daily routine. I'd say I only teach what I try to learn. I only teach what I need to learn. So I will say what I need to learn right now I'm working on, and that is be easy on yourself. Just be easy on yourself, and you're doing great. And just be easy on yourself. Love yourself. When we were working so hard to improve and grow all the time, I think I'm always doing that, and sort of the problem with seeking is it leaves no time for finding. If you're pushing yourself that hard, it can hurt you in the long run.
I like that. And what are 3 qualities peers of yours would say about you?
About me?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I couldn't even tell you. I hope they would say that that I'm kind, and I'm sure they'd say I work hard, and say about me. Probably say I'm crazy.
Okay, well, end with that.
Something either that or the opposite.
Cody, thank you so much for being here. You're welcome to plug yourself, Cody Blue.
Yeah, I'm on Instagram as Cody Blue Snider, CodyBlueSnider, but I suggest go to the Awakened Underground podcast, wherever you get your podcast. Check out the 10 episodes will guide you on psychedelics, and if you want to check out my work, my calling card is a short film called Fool's Day, but direct commercials, music videos, and some TV. So and just look out for me.
Thanks, Cody.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. Yeah,
thanks,
amazing.
guys. You can follow me at Jessica J. Fury. You can follow the podcast and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Dome Girl Podcast. Thank you so much for being here. I'll talk to you guys soon.